Welcome to the Makeover Monday Challenge, a weekly challenge brought to you by the Paper Crafters Library and Sunny Stampin' Studios. The purpose of Makeover Mondays is to help you learn how to take the ideas and inspirations that you find on the internet and make it your own. This challenge is strictly a work from your stash challenge. Every Monday, we take a project we found on the internet and show you how we used it for inspiration, how we make it our own, using our supplies in our stash. Your challenge is to do the same, and I'll give you more details at the end of this video. First off, here's today's inspiration piece, a clean and simple standard size card. As you can see, Deanna uses different patterns of designer paper to add a background to the card and incorporates a few different elements in the greeting label cluster. In the end, Deanna's card shows us a quick and easy way to use up those scrap pieces of designer paper that we all have on hand. As I show you my card and how to make it, I will share with you how I drew inspiration from Deanna's piece to create my own. So let's get started. I'm using a white smooth cardstock background, and this piece measures 5 1/4 by 10 1/2. I scored it at 5 1/4 on the end, on the middle, and I'm going to fold this in half and crease along that score line using my bone folder. I'm going to create my card so that it has my fold across the top, and I chose this because I found that when I was starting to use Deanna's card as my inspiration, that the elements that I chose to use and work with were a little bit larger, and you'll see that when I start to embellish the page, or the card. So I chose to create a 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 card, where Deanna used a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch standard size card. So next you're going to need a 5 by 5 inch piece of designer paper, and here I'm using the Walk in the Park collection from Echo Park. You're going to center and stick this to your card base. Now we're going to set this aside for a moment while we start to create our background embellishment pieces. I noticed that Deanna had used some scrap pieces, or what it appeared to look like as some scrap pieces of designer paper that we all have on hand, and I always find that when I'm creating, I always have these little slivers of designer paper left over. I never throw them away because you never know when you'll need them. In my collection from Echo Park here, the Walk in the Park collection, I found that we were given this title page, or the front cover page, to show you what's in the collection. And when I flipped it over, I thought, oh wow, here's the extra element, so it works as an extra page. While I was looking at that, I noticed that at the top part of my title page here, I was given some slivers of designer paper. So this makes a great use of that as well, not just your scraps. So I'm actually going to cut this apart with my paper trimmer and cut out each of these slivers of designer paper, and then choose which ones I will like to use to embellish the background of my card. But any of the other ones that I will cut off here, I will use in another project, so don't ever throw those types of scraps away. So as you can see, I have cut off the top section of my title page here. I'm going to set this part aside because I'm not going to use that. I did cut apart all the slivers of designer paper that are inside the collection, and I noticed that some of the patterns are a little bit smaller than what's inside the pattern, but it doesn't matter because when I'm creating a background like this, I can use whatever I have on hand, so it doesn't matter if that is slightly shrunk down to size. So now your job is to take these and choose which ones you want for your background. So I'm just going to start to lay them on my card and see how they coordinate. And you can cut these down in size, in varying sizes if you wish. They just happen to be all the same width in this when I cut this apart, so I just kept them like that. So that gives me enough coverage on the background. So I'm going to set up aside these slivers, and like I said, I will use these in another project of mine, so don't ever throw out pieces like that because you never know when you're going to need them. So for Deanna's project, she cut fishtails in the end of each of her strips of designer paper. If you're not too handy with scissors or you don't like to be uneven, you can use a square punch and just insert your designer paper into the corner of your punch and punch out the same fishtail, and it should be most of the time on the same angle as long as you're inserting your paper on the same way. And this way you can have varying sizes too, depending on how far or how little you insert your designer paper. So go ahead and punch all your pieces of designer paper on both ends into fishtails. So now that your strips are stuck down, you're ready to start embellishing. And if you noticed in Deanna's card, she embellished in the bottom right hand corner with a greeting, and then added some elements in the foreground and background to create a clustered embellishment in that bottom right hand corner. I found that my greeting embellishment was a little bit larger, so it will be in towards the bottom, but it will be somewhat centered. So I chose the Walk in the Park label, and I've gone ahead and added some Stampin' Dimensionals to the back, and I'm just going to peel off the backing. From my Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm going to stick that down. And like I said, Deanna had put her embellishment in the bottom right hand corner. Because mine is a quite large one and I made a square card, I am centering that along the bottom of my card base. Now we are ready to embellish. I'm going to use one of Stampin' Up's hat pins here, and like Deanna, she had a flag on her pin, her hat pin. I am also going to do that. So I needed the length of my hat pin because I have a substantially larger card than some of the hat pins we see, and Stampin' Up! Came out with these new larger long hat pins. I do notice that the ball at the end of my pin is a little too small for my liking, so I'm just going to take a basic pearl bead you can find at any craft store, and thread that onto my hat pin before I do my greeting flag, and that's just to balance the weight ratio a little bit better. So I'm going to take a strip of designer paper, and this is a coordinating piece in the collection, and it measures 3/4 of an inch, and it's just a scrap piece I had. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to add my double-sided adhesive to one end. I'm going to lay my hat pin at the end of my adhesive, and I'm just going to fold my designer paper over, keeping the bead towards the top. And aligning my edges of my cardstock, sticking that together and squeezing that around the pin. So that's how I went ahead and created my flag. I am slightly off a little bit, so I'm just going to bring my paper snips in and trim up the edges of my cardstock there on both the top and bottom so that I don't have the other pattern from the inside of the cardstock showing. So I'm just cleaning up those edges. And now I'm going to create the greeting on my flag. And in Deanna, she was making a baby card. I'm just making a friendship card. So I'm going to add the letters from this collection to spell out life is, and then a walk in the park. So just take your individual letters. You could stamp them if you wish. Like I said, I just have some small letters. So I'm going to stick those down, and I'm going to slightly offset each letter just because it doesn't have to be perfect then. They're overlapping and a little bit offset from each other. So there's my life, and then you have to spell out is. And then I'm just going to add a small flower embellishment, and this again was found in the same collection. It was a little flower, and I went ahead and I added a tiny rhinestone, or sorry, a tiny pearl to the center of my flower, and that will complete the end of my flag. So now I purposely left an extra large flag here because now I can come in, and you could punch this if you wish. You could insert this into your punch, but because I want to see where my embellishment is, I am going to use my scissors, and I'm just going to cut the fishtail in that flag. So there you have your flag embellishment, and this will get stuck down just tucked in behind that greeting. If you happen to have a Stampin' Dimensional that you can hit, I would suggest you can find one that's underneath your greeting and stick that down. But I am also going to stick my flag to my card using one of my Stampin' Dimensionals as well, or probably two because it's a slightly longer flag. This will also hold the pin in place because the flag is stuck down to the pin. So peel the backing off of that. And it's okay to have your flag hanging over the edge of your card, as Deanna had done that, so I kept with that slight detail. So I embellished the center of each of my small little flowers here that I have, and I'm going to stick my blue one to the side of my greeting, and my orange one here I'm going to stick directly to my card base. So they will look side by side, but because my greeting is up on dimensionals, it's a little raised. So there I have my finished card. I drew inspiration from Deanna's card by creating the background with my scrap pieces or my extra pieces of designer paper strips, cutting my fishtails in each end, creating the flag on my hat pin, and clustering my greeting in the bottom when it's finished towards the right hand corner, just as Deanna did in her card. So there you have my finished project. Now it's your turn. So here's how the challenge works. Create your own project using Deanna's for inspiration. While I chose to create a card, use her inspiration to create any kind of project you'd like. Post your project on your blog or online photo gallery, then come back to the Paper Crafters Library blog. Scroll to the bottom of the Makeover Monday challenge post. Click on the In Links button and link to your blog post. If you're watching this video from somewhere other than our blog, in the description section of the video, there will be a direct link to the Makeover Monday blog post. We will draw one name from all the participants on Monday, February 20th, and the winner will receive one of our spring grab bags featuring over $30 of spring-themed paper crafting products. See you on the blog!